Okay, welcome everyone to SABADO Sessions podcast. I'm your host Joey. I'm joined with my co-hosts Alex Espin, Durance, and today collaborating with us we've got Abdul Majid. Can't thank him enough. But our special guest is none other than Mike Tuscherer. I hope that I didn't butcher that last name. But yeah,
That's
so
right.
happy to have you on the pod. How have you been, first of all? How's your life in general?
Man, total chaos. Like really from before South Africa, we were getting ready to move, and so I've got four kids, and the move took us from Wyoming in the U.S. to Washington State. So pretty significant, and that's it's been months of like getting ready to move, and then you pack all your stuff, and then it goes, and then trying to figure out new places to live, new childcare, new everything, and it's been pretty crazy. But I'm getting my training in, which is
Man,
helping a lot.
I could only imagine it's literally uprooting yourself from one
Yeah,
location to the next. Correct me if I'm wrong, that's a move from the Midwest to
yeah,
the East-ish
yeah. It's
coast.
like the like
Oh wait, no, it's Washington.
almost
That's
smack in the
West,
middle.
West.
Yeah, up to the west coast.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's about 12 hours driving time or so if you drove it straight through. But with
But
little kids, it's not like that. So
but gym wise though, I'm pretty sure powerlifting gyms are very prominent in the West Coast because I know
yeah,
from Sacramento downwards you got like Third Street Barbell Brigade, and all those gyms. But
sure.
do you have a home one now? Do you like?
Yeah. There's one nearby, Spanaway Fitness Center. Nathan Alexander trains there as well as several other lifters in this area. They've got really great equipment, and then like important for me,
Of course.
especially initially, they're like, "Hey, we've got a childcare room," and I was like, "Really?"
Oh
Because
Whoa.
wow.
that's gonna make my life right now. So that helps so much.
That's got to be such a gem to have because
Yeah.
not many gyms I can imagine caters to.
Come, yeah.
Yeah.
How much
Powerlifters
is
who
the
are also
membership?
family people. Yeah.
And how much is the
Uh,
I
uh,
have membership
uh,
trained, yeah. there?
Sorry, what was that, Alex?
So how much is the memberships there? Is that with childcare and everything? Just out of curiosity.
I I want to say it was like I could be wrong on this too because I was just like, yes, we're in. But I want to say it was like $35 US a month
That's
plus
so
10.
cheap. Oh,
Yeah.
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 I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
additional for the childcare, but still,
Yeah.
like it's not it's not much, you know.
Yeah, it's not
Like I
steep
was
at
like,
all.
this is a no
So
brainer for sure.
so here in the UK, I think the only gym that I know of, correct me if I'm wrong, boys, is that do childcare as well, is a gym called Virgin Active. And their
Mm.
memberships range, like the cheapest you'll get there is like 90 to £100, and that's just the gym. Then if you want the childcare added on to that, that's like an extra 20, 30. So you're looking about maybe probably 140, maybe 150 a month
USD.
in
I
in,
mean,
in, in
I've trained at
pounds,
a gym.
pounds as well.
I've
Yeah.
trained at a gym where it's more of like a family base kind of gym. So people bring the kids with the trolleys and like everything. And like it's always very interesting, but they don't charge for daycare. But then they've
Yeah.
just got baby stuff around. So you can kind of
Yeah.
just put your kid in a corner and then train.
Yeah.
But it makes it very interesting because when the kids are crying, you have to like squat to a crying kid. So
It
it's
does.
it's it's a very interesting gym sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a home gym for a while, and especially in like the initial stages of COVID, it's like, we'll take the kids to the gym with me, and so they were hanging out a lot while we were training initially, and we had two kids at the time, and so it was a bit more manageable, but still, like training them to sit still, not to like walk on the platform or get under the weights or
Oh my God, of
stuff like
course.
that. So,
Jesus.
but
Like,
still, I mean, kids are kids. Like they're
yeah.
sitting right in front of me while I'm squatting, and they like to make faces at me and stuff like that. So you're trying
I
not
mean,
to.
it's either gonna help you or not during the lift. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we
I
just start
think,
programming that in,
I
right?
think the whole having kids thing is big for us right now because obviously I don't know if you're aware, but Durance, also is a father now. That was like one of the big. I don't know if you're aware, but I coach him. That was one of the big things I had to consider. It impacts your life immensely, like
Yeah.
having children. And I guess my question for you, and I don't know if it's gonna help Durance at all, but how did you sort of like, especially with the first or second child, how do you, I don't know, find the contingencies to actually fit that in with the training? And because obviously before, I'm, I would assume you had much greater freedom in terms of the times that you had, right?
Yeah.
So how did you, not even, I guess, circumvent around the whole
Yeah.
situation?
Man, this is like turning into one of my favorite topics to talk about, but it also, like, the people that it affects, it really affects them, but it's also not all of us. But I do think it's really important. Um, but I know for me initially, like the first 6 weeks was just chaos. Like you're reestablishing new normals, new routines for everything. And even when you feel like you've got it under control, you're just like 10 minutes away from being out of control again.
Yeah,
Right? So
yeah.
it's just a big adjustment period, and for me, it was always about 6 weeks. I didn't have a whole lot of experience when we
Mm,
started having kids either. So it was really, really new for me. Maybe it took me a long time to pick up on it. But during that time, I would try to make my training sessions so that they were just really short. I
mm.
mean, I wasn't training for anything at that moment either. It's just like, just do something so you're not in free fall during this time.
Yeah, so you're not pretty much sedentary. That's what you're trying to
Yeah,
avoid. But and
exactly.
like I am gonna get onto the training bit right now, but before we touch on that, I just want to ask real quickly, like, would you say upon obviously you have four children, I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure you've had like an abundance of practice when it comes to
at
like
this point, yeah.
yeah, like tackling it. Like what would you say that there was like a constant and variables that you took in with each as with each child that came?
Yeah, the sleep disruption has been pretty constant and persistent as well. Like, I mean, my oldest is 7, and then my youngest will be 2 uh, in a week or two.
Whoa.
So, like, it's a decent range, but that's also like somebody's always small. There's always
Mm,
a little one. There's
yes.
always somebody who's not quite making it all the way through the night, and you gotta, so sleep disruption has been fairly constant for like the last decade.
Jesus.
I mean, on the topic of having children, did it come a time where you probably thought, "Do you know what? I think I'm just gonna have to stop lifting because I can't do this. This is too much." Because again, me, like, personally, I came to the point where
Yeah,
I thought about, oh, look, I'm getting an hour some nights 2 hours, and I'm thinking, if I'm gonna be competitive, this is not the way. So probably I need to rethink about what I want to get out of powerlifting. Do I still want to be on that top level lifting where I'm competing against the top lift in the world, or I just want to do it for me? Did you come to
well,
that place as well?
how old is your little one, if you don't mind?
15 months.
15 months. Okay. Yeah. I mean, my experience has been that it's gotten better with time. I mean, sometimes it's still very rough. Like I'm working with Kristen Lander for nutrition, and she likes
Mm,
to look at lots of different variables, and she kind of thinks of it more from a recovery standpoint. So she asked me to track sleep and sleep quality, and I think she's kind of given up on me a little bit. My
w-
weekly
w-
check-ins, she's like, "Look, sleep is what it is. You're doing your best. Moving on." you know?
my, was it that sporadic, the sleep pattern, that it got to a point where that's why she's given up? Is that what it was?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, at this point, with the small ones being 2, because I mean the smallest ones are always the biggest disruptions at nighttime.
That requires so
Um,
much attention, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
just waking up in the middle of the night and needing something, and you know, um, so that has gotten better with time. So that's part of it. But I mean, at this point too, another part of it is just getting up early to start my work day, and
Mm,
I could do better. But Jurgens, to your question, there's definitely periods where I thought, not now. Like I need to kind of backseat train. Maybe not entirely training, right? But I'm not training for competing yet. But life is long, and this stage that you're in, that I was in, that I still am in, no stage is forever, and that's gonna change and evolve. I'm also fortunate that I'm able to kind of make this part of my workday.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I feel so much for people that don't get that opportunity, that they're working a real job, and they get home at the end of the day, and still have a family, train at night or train early in the morning. Man, that's rough. So whatever the situation is, if that's kind of where you're at, what you're thinking, no fault from me for it. But I would say that the circumstances around it are going to change. They'll evolve. There's an arc to these things, and it'll trend toward getting better, I hope.
Yes, I'm kind of happy you kind of touched on training. I know you said you haven't taken a backseat per se, but you're also not training for anything right now. So within that, what protocols have you incorporated in your training now that you would say, I don't know, that you would even advocate to others that are probably in the situation you're in? Like how much has training changed? Like, what is it? I get you, you did mention it's shorter because it's kind of pressed for time.
Yeah, I would say that's more in the beginning. At this point, I feel like I can, I just recently signed up for another comp in November.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, so I feel like I can train for things now, but especially early on when they're real small, I wasn't trying to be super serious. I figured that I could sneak away for 15 minutes at a time. Maybe I could sneak away for 15 minutes 2 or 3 times a day. So I came up with these like 15-minute workouts that I could just go down to the basement. I could warm up, do a couple sets, be finished in 15 minutes, and then come back, And then later on, you finally get everybody down for a nap. You're like, well, we'll be good for another 15 minutes. So I'll sneak down and get another quick workout in.
So how many
nuts.
how many intervals are we talking about here? Are you talking about like 6, 7 different occasions in a one training day?
At the time, it would be usually 3, but I would pick exercises that were easy to warm up for. And I mean, this worked because I had a home gym, right?
Yes.
So I could have all the equipment set up for it. So like it was like feet up bench, like lunges and pull-ups or something like that. So I could sneak down there, feet up bench. It wasn't as heavy of a load. So you just, do 2 or 3 warm-up sets, put whatever the working weight is, and you do maybe 3 working sets with short rest intervals. Okay, that's it. That's it for now. Back to work, and then do something similar for lunges. Pick something that's easy to warm up for. You can be warmed up in 5 minutes. You can spend 10 minutes on working sets and then go back to it. But that was fairly short-lived, like that got me through like 6 or 8 weeks. And then by the end of that, things were in a rhythm enough that I could set aside more reliable amounts of time.
Was you satisfied with that though? In terms of like, after your sessions, obviously it's only 15 minutes, but did you ever think like, this isn't really doing anything? But like obviously short for time, and at the end of the day, priorities come first. We get that. But was there anything like playing in your head thinking, you know what, that was just pointless, maybe I should have just give it another half an hour?
In the beginning, it was novel, so it wasn't that big of a deal. I was just glad to be getting in something. By the end, I was having thoughts like that, and so I was glad to be able to change. By the end, I was like, yeah, okay, this has run its course. It's time to switch to something else.
But those 15 minutes, it kept you in the game. What I mean, it kept you in the game, like it kept you in condition, in a peak condition for you to include that increase that timing, isn't it?
Yeah. it kept me, I mean, there's a psychological component too. Like it kept me connected to a thing that I care about, and it kept me feeling like me. I didn't feel like I was losing myself or like people talk. I think maybe a more like typically masculine way of looking at it. You hear guys talk about like the gym keeps me sane, and I think a lot of it is that being able to connect to this thing that makes me feel like me. I'm not only living my life for other people. There is something still for me. And even just a little bit kind of helps with that. But I do think there is the conditioning aspect to it too. You can get in some quality work, even if it's not as much or quite the same as what you would want to do. It's better than nothing.
I agree. I mean, before we touch into because you're a powerlifter yourself and you're pretty much really competitive. Before I touch into the federation and all of that stuff, I think I'll ask the question probably everyone are thinking in their mind: RPEs, right?
Yeah.
So every time when they think about RPE, some people even don't even call it RPE; they call it Mark T. So, which is brilliant. So, can you just tell us a little bit about not the whole story, but how did you came about with getting RP into powerlifting? Just a little story in the beginning.
Sure. So I was coaching my university team, just kind of ended up the de facto team coach. And
which university, sorry?
It was the Air Force Academy.
Whoa,
in the
right.
US. Yeah, so we started with 2 other people on the team, and then my second year, those 2 people quit. So I was like, well, that sucks.
Yeah,
to be on a team by myself. So I started recruiting a bunch of people. By the time I graduated, we had a full men's team, and a year or 2 after I graduated, they had a full men's and women's team. So we really did a good job of building it up over those years.
And this is strictly a powerlifting team?
Yeah, it's just a club team for the cadets there. So they still have to do all the normal cadet things, but they do this basically on their free time. But since they all joined after me, they were looking for me to be the coach. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll figure this out. But I was thinking about powerlifting obsessively. And at the time, people would talk about, especially like when it came to accessory work and stuff like that, like, hey, leave a rep in the tank on your accessory work, and it's not as taxing. You can train more volume, with a little bit more frequency. That was like a big deal. Like, leave a rep in the tank. Like, what do you mean? Are you soft or something? You're not taking every rep just as hard as you can, every set as hard as you can. And at the time, I was reading as well. I'd read something about RPE for endurance sports and how it started as like a 6 to 20 scale that they were hoping would kind of match up with heart rate, but it didn't really work out that way. So it kind of evolved into this 1 to 10 scale. And I thought, well, you don't have to just leave a rep in the tank. You could leave 2 reps in the tank or 3, or, there's a whole range of possibilities here. So then it became a process of like, how do we port this idea of, relative effort in lifting weights to a number scale.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of where that chart came from.
I know you mentioned how many reps you have left in the tank. What would you say, if any, is the difference between reps in reserve and the RPE scaling? I don't know if you've touched this much or ever in podcasts you've done before, but would you say there's a difference to it, the approach, I mean?
Probably for most people, there's not much difference. Like, I think there is a difference, but we're really kind of splitting hairs.
Yeah.
I think the differences come about when you're getting into some weird situations. Like, imagine that you're doing, say, 10 sets of 5 with something like 70%. So the first couple sets are easy, but unless you're resting a lot, as you get closer to the end, they get harder, right?
Of course,
but
yeah.
They get harder in a strange sort of way. your first rep velocity is going to be pretty similar, but you're going to fatigue so much faster by the end.
Yeah.
I think RPE kind of conceptualizes that, where it's difficult to do reps in reserve. Like, it may feel like a 7 RPE, but did you really have 3 reps in reserve? Probably not, because the relationship there gets strange when you have that much fatigue involved. So things like that, or you go to like really high reps, 20 reps, like, well, it's a 9 RPE. Are we talking about exactly 1 rep in the tank, not 2? Well, that's really difficult to judge, so, and then as you get experience with it, I think RPE can take on more of a linguistic quality. Like, I've talked to people like since forever about using RPE for weightlifting, because the idea of reps in reserve doesn't quite translate.
Yeah. So from that extent, that's where they pretty much like part ways, like you said. Yeah.
Definitely. So like if you're doing strongman stuff, then farmers walks. Well, reps in reserve doesn't make sense at all.
I've always wondered this, and obviously the answers I've gotten were quite a mix. But considering you're pretty much considered the father of RPE, I've always wondered, like you mentioned with that volume work of 10 sets of 5. Obviously, if it's like an RPE 7, you start with X weight. Through the latter sets, would it be an advocation of yours to like decrease the weight towards the latter sets just to achieve that correct RPE scaling, or would you prefer to advocate stick to that specific chosen weight, or is there like a range as well given?
I think it depends on what kind of effect we want to create. If we're looking to accumulate volume, if we're looking for maybe the metabolic adaptations, we want to sometimes the physiology stuff is a bit speculative and maybe a little bit outside of my scope, but I think it helps to conceptualize what's going on, that there are differences between these things. So just kind of with that disclaimer in mind, if you're trying to do something like improve glycogen storage or develop energy systems, develop work capacity in some way, then maybe you would prioritize the reps.
The quality
in which
of
case
reps.
You would want you would want to decrease the weight in order to keep the reps up. But if you're prioritizing strength, then you want to emphasize load. So what I'll do, if the block is kind of focused on strength development specifically, we'll set the load with the first set and then do a rep drop. So maybe like I might know that let's see, 6 reps at a 9 RPE for most people is going to be around 80%. So if that's kind of the intensity that I want to work with, maybe we'll do 6 reps at a 9, maybe 5 reps at an 8. It's something that's a reliable set that we can use to set the intensity, and then we'll keep the weight the same and then reduce the reps. So we know that this weight is as heavy as we want it to be. It gives you a chance to push things. It gives you a chance to auto-regulate, to do something hard. But then maybe the rest of the sets are all triples or something like that are considerably lower RPE. But that also helps us to not accumulate so much fatigue with the volume that we're doing.
I think Joey, we got insight there for my next block. So
I'll
be taking
note. So Mike, like I don't know if you've picked up the pattern now, but I'm very, very intrigued with like the mental aspect of your approach. I'm trying to it's like trying to read a book and reading the same line over and over again just to it makes sense sort of situation. And my I guess my follow-up question to what you just explained is, I'm pretty sure you're no stranger to criticisms of the RPE method, pretty much, and I'm guessing your emerging strategies. But you know,
Yeah.
you've been, I don't know if it was personally you've been personally criticized, but Ed Cohen had a few things to say about RPE, and man, upon highlighting that, I never really heard a reply to what he said. I don't know if you remember his critique of the RPE sort of approach to programming, but did you have, you don't remember?
No, I don't.
I think it came, I'm just paraphrasing here, but it came along the lines of you know, if 1 week the RPE9 is this, and would it be still attainable to create that? Would it still be able to facilitate that RPE9 the following week with you know, things to bear in mind, like, you know, recovery and everything. So it's gonna come to a point where the RPE scaling would be I forgot what word he said, but it's almost unattainable, I think. I don't know if I'm using the right words here, but it came along somewhere along those lines. And what would your reply be to that? I'm sorry, I'm probably butchering what he said about it, but yeah, it's one of the things that comes to mind when it comes to the critiques of RPE.
I'm familiar with similar types of viewpoints, you know, but I tend to think that has to do with the arrangement of things like, you know, your training load and how heavy are you going. That's not necessarily the act of rating the RPE that causes that. That's you know, the RPE is there whether you acknowledge it or not. You know, like you could, RPE has always been there. Every set that has been done, you know, if I started writing about this in, you know, 2007, 2008 timeframe, you know, people in 1995, there's still an RPE associated with the sets that they did. They just maybe didn't attach a number to it the same way that I do. You know, so you still have to manage your training variables. You know, you can't just say, I can do whatever I want every week, as much volume, as much intensity, you know, and auto-regulation will save me. It's a tool to help give you some course corrections, but you still have to start out with as good of a plan as you can. You know, there's the tools of auto-regulation, all of them together that we have, are not so good that you can just go to the gym and they'll guide you from scratch. You know, there still has to be some planning that takes place.
Yeah. Sorry, are you
quick question here.
Does that more or less address the
yeah,
point?
very much. I'm sorry, I got one more follow-up question, and then it's open to everyone else. I'm so sorry. It's just,
it was open since the beginning, but
I know, but I'm just really delving.
Joe's being greedy here, man.
No, because this is like a pool of like endless knowledge and experience. So yeah. So my next question is that would you say that there's something, there's an approach you advocated from the beginning of your coaching career that you sort of changed to now, and are there still things that you conceptualize way back from the start that you still keep? Like, is there anything that's changed? Is there anything that's remained? Pretty much, that's my question.
Yeah, I think kind of on the surface, one thing that comes to mind that has been persistent, I tend to use more exercise variety than a lot of my peers, I would say. That tends to be my read of it, that, you know, it's common that I'll do strictly the competition exercise usually about once a week, and then we do several other variations that are quite close. You know, there may be pause lifts, there may be something that's, you know, only one small variable away, but it's not quite exactly the competition movement. You know, and kind of a tendency toward trying to address weaknesses and things like that. My perception is that I probably do more of that than a lot of my peers do, and I think that's held pretty constant through my programming career. But man, so much other stuff has changed, then changed, then changed again. You know,
just to narrow it down, what would you say is like your top 3 then that you've changed?
I think the planning model is probably the biggest one. like the most fundamental change, like to go from you know, a top-down block periodization inspired model of planning to saying, you know, this works a lot, but there are often enough these situations where somebody really has a bad time. You know, they missed their peak entirely. It just doesn't seem to work. And what's with that? And then you know, searching for a bottom-up approach, coming across some of Bondarchuk's work and using that to develop emerging strategies, and then having a lot of success with that. One thing that I've come to realize about it is it's not so much a way of thinking about like exercise science or physiology or anything like that. It's a way of thinking about knowledge. How do we know this stuff to begin with? You know, it's epistemological. So, and it's one layer of it. You know, what happens if we hold these variables constant? Exercises, sets, reps, RPE. What if we hold those variables constant and then use that to understand something about the output, which is your strength? Okay. Well, now we learn about these 4 variables. What's the optimum combination to improve your strength? Which is really, really useful, right? But it doesn't necessarily have to be those 4 variables. It could be other variables too. What if it's not, you know, sets, reps, RPE? What if it's training load in terms of what if you're holding constant a certain training stress or a certain level of fatigue? Or, I mean, you can kind of get weird with it if you want. And it introduces more variety in terms of the athlete's experience, because what the athlete is experiencing is the exercises, sets, reps, RPE, right?
Yeah.
But now there's like some part of it is constant, but it's constant on a different layer. I don't know. This is honestly, there's no way this all makes sense.
But... No. I'm with you. Honestly, I'm with you.
No.
And I'm
loving
loving
it.
We are
with you. No, you are. We are with you.
Okay, sorry. we are with you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I feel a bit selfish.
I'm kind of. I haven't done a lot of talking about this layer of things, so I'm a little bit thinking while I'm talking. So I don't know quite how it's coming across.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but this is what our show's about, man. I'm sorry.
This is super interesting to me, so it's good. I want to, you know, if this sounds crazy, then somebody's got to tell me, right?
No, honestly, I'm loving every bit. But yeah, like I said, guys, by all means, jump in.
I mean, okay, let's switch the question to, let's get away a little bit from RPE.
Before we switch it, I did want to say I only have one left on the RPE thing, right?
I've got one on RPE too.
Yeah, go for it.
One more RPE question each, right? All right. So my one's pretty much like, obviously you have a lot of people that you coach. So my question was, do you have any athletes, any known like big athletes that competed in Worlds, Euros, etc., that even though they may agree with you about the whole RPE process, it's like it doesn't work for them and they'd rather have like more percentage stuff in their program? Yeah. And if so, have they even surprised you when it comes to that, where you're like, oh shit, actually, you know what, that actually works a lot better for them as opposed to the RPE?
Yeah,
if so,
definitely.
Can you name them as well if you can?
Yeah, let's throw some names in there as well, so we know.
You know, one person that comes to mind, I haven't coached her specifically, but Susie Hartwig Gary. She's a masters lifter. She's like 27-time U.S. national champion in the 50, 52, 56 kilo category. Just absolute legend. But I've been friends with her for years and years, and she's a really great person. But we've talked about this, and it's not just the RPE for her, but she's used velocity to try to, you know, she's thought, well, maybe I'm just not that good at rating my RPE, so you hook up a velocity device. And it's just that all the reps are the same. You know, they're the same until they're not. And then, so like all of the tools of auto-regulation that I might bring into a situation like that, it's just not.
So I guess to like, there's still so few people out there that gives you a few curveballs when it comes to.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think like that's, really important. You know, like especially to that person. You know, if that's you and you're the curveball, then that's really important to you. You know, like
Yeah.
nobody wants to be a cog in the machine.
Yeah.
So my thing, well, one of my beliefs about coaching is, can my system come up with a answer for an athlete that I would have thought wouldn't work? You know, like if you showed it, if I looked at my crystal ball ahead of time and
Mhm.
it's like, this guy only can do 5 sets a week for lower body total,
Whoa.
you know, I would be like, that's not enough, man. There's no way.
Mm.
You know, that's
Mhm.
just way too low volume. But I've seen people who are like that.
Yeah.
If you give them any more than that, then they break. You know, if you go over like 7 RPE, then they break down. And you're like, man, I really did not think that that would be a thing, but here it is. You know, so I want to make sure that whatever system I have can, like, it's possible to come up with a solution like that if that's what's best for the athlete. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mo,
Go on, Mo, go.
Yeah, just so you quickly just mentioned there about curveballs, like athletes that defy basic logic as to what progression with volume and things like that. And first of all, before we get into the things, I'm a massive fan. My coach is a massive fan. He honestly killed me by mentioning, like I said, I was talking to you and said, then say thank you for everything you've done. Basically, he's all psychology, physiology, like everything from his training is all from you on that end. So one thing as an athlete, on my RPE scale, and I don't know if you had experience with this, but my RPE scale is very weird in terms of I could move lighter weight at RPE 8, for example. And then as I get heavier, the RPE decreases. And also sometimes when I deadlift, my first rep could be an RPE 9. And as I do more reps, it basically eases off to an RPE 7. So how do you, because obviously I still train RP basically, and we kind of tend to take the last rep as a guide as to that's an RP7 or RP8. But how do you normally tend to, because once it gets to high volume reps, then RP gets very, very weird for me very quickly. So have you ever had athletes like that who just kind of have a varying RP as weights go up, as reps go up? Like, what do you normally tend to do in situations like that?
Yeah, definitely have seen that before, and I think if you look at the potential risks of being wrong on RPE, if we're talking about like accessory movements and stuff like that, then you know, if you're off by a little bit, or if the RPE gets weird, then it's probably fine. The deadlift thing I've noticed more and more lately, and it is somewhat concerning, because you can end up in this situation where you say, you know, hey, do, you know, 4 reps at a 8 RPE, you know, and they'll do 4 reps at a 7 RPE and then go up a little bit and get none. You know, I've definitely seen that, or they'll go up and get 1 or something. You know, the reps on the deadlift thing is somewhat weird. You can get around it a bit by using a single to benchmark and then doing a percentage after that. I've been experimenting more with using first rep velocity as a intensity control. So what you would do to do that, you've got to establish what your first rep velocity is at different intensity zones. So say you work up to a 1RM and then you work back down with just singles, and you do a single at maybe 90%, single at 85, single at 80, single at 75. And so you're establishing, okay, singles at 75 are, you know, 0.45 meters per second. Singles at 80 are 0.4 meters per second. It's usually probably not that nice, but whatever. And then you know, hey, I want to train at 85% today. That means my first rep needs to be a 0.37, give or take a little bit, you know, and you know about what that's going to be because your strength varies day to day, but it doesn't vary that much, right? So you've got a target, and as you're warming up to it, you know, you can know, all right, hey, things are feeling really good today. I'm going to try to push it. Okay, it's supposed to be a 0.37, it's really a 0.34, so that was probably a little bit heavy. next week I'll be a little bit more conservative, and so you can dial your numbers in that way, looking at first rep velocity. But that does require some sort of velocity measurement. It requires more math,
Oh, right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. More equipment, more math, the velocity stuff, you can use your phone camera and get bar velocity. There's more apps that do that now, and they're honestly a lot better than they used to be. They're pretty decent now. So it is more accessible, but there's still, look, if RPE itself is kind of a barrier to entry, then velocity really has a barrier to entry.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Cool. Now it's time to change, right, guys? You okay? Literally, Mike. Again, I mean, we can stay here and talk about RPE the whole day. We're all interested in the system itself. I mean, especially someone like me, Joe. We know every time he prescribes RPE, I feel like I want to kill him because I get confused. Literally, I cannot understand them because he would tell me, Jay, hit this at 9. I will hit it, will be like a 6. I'm thinking, what the fuck is a 9? Do you know what I mean? And then also, like, there's a lot of these, especially like nowadays, we got social media, especially young kids. You see them, oh yeah, I hit 260 score at RPA. And then you're looking at the RPA, you're thinking, mate, if I ask you to load that way for a next rep, you will die. So that was not an A. So it's really like, it's hard. So I think my question here is like, in terms of like, what would you advise for a novice, a newcomer to the game, right? How would you advise them what approach to take if they want to incorporate IP into their training? Is it just like a normal what you do with an elite athlete, or is it another method that you normally advise?
I would start out just by practicing, like just rate. Even if your program doesn't require it, just practice rating. And especially if you have some harder sets, that's a good way to kind of test yourself. If you've been saying this is an RPE 8, and then you've got a chance to do an AMRAP or something, and you don't have 2 in the tank, then that's a learning opportunity, right? But I think velocity really would be kind of the next level there. I think it's got a little ways to go. You would need to have some way to connect it to the barbell, and it would just do its thing in the background. The more interacting and reading, interpreting that you've got to do, the harder that's going to be for beginners especially, but just anybody who's not like totally nerding out over this, it's a lot to ask, and you start throwing numbers at people and asking them to do math problems in between sets, it stops being fun for a lot of people. So it would need to be something that kind of operates in the background.
Yeah. And these devices are not cheap as well, especially the velocity tracker is not cheap at all.
Around
like
200,
300
exactly.
300 pounds.
I was thinking of doing my own Arduino project actually to build a velocity tracker. Never go around to it, but
So they're not cheap. So yeah, Mike, I'm gonna move on to your powerlifting career now. So I know you spoke about RPEs, and a lot of people that know Mike T, they don't associate Mike T as being a powerlifter. They always see like, oh, he's the father of RPEs, he's a coach, and especially you have got names like Bray Gibbs and Luke Richardson, all of that big names. So they associate you to that than actually the powerlifting sport. I've seen you've competed for USAPL, and I'm an IPF lifter.
I know where this is going already.
So I've asked this question to every single American I've had. I am in the proper powerlifting federation. The rest we don't know what federation they are. So what made you choose USAPL, Mike?
So the last competition I did was in March. I did a USAPL competition because I wanted to compete and it was nearby. If I'm being honest, I've been a member of USAPL since, gosh, forever, but the competition that I've signed up for in November is a Powerlifting America competition.
Ooh.
So to add a little bit more about my thought process there, it's something that I did wrestle with quite a bit. Ultimately, I decided that most of my athletes are IPF lifters. what would be most important to me as an athlete would be competing for a world championship. And also, look, just being honest, there's an optionality here that I can go do the IPF thing. And if something takes a turn and the IPF is no longer the best game in town and USAPL creates something that's just super awesome, I can go back and do that later. So I do think that, like, from an athlete standpoint, I want to spend my limited athletic years doing the things that are the most interesting. And right now that seems to be the IPF. So that's where I'm headed.
You
Nice.
mentioned you mentioned majority of your lifters are sorry, everyone all right?
Yeah, fine.
I guess this is the fatherhood thing coming on right now.
Yeah, sorry, we're
No worries,
school's
no
not
worries.
quite back in yet, so he's hanging out with me during the day,
Oh,
which is
okay,
kind of
cool.
nice actually.
Are you okay to continue?
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, all good.
So yeah, the question I had was, yeah, like you mentioned, majority of those that you coach are in the IPF. I know this is like a weird question, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. Would you say that there are any lifters that wanted to have you as their coach that didn't really seek coaching per se, but more so for the clout that you garner? Because I mean, come on, RTS is a big name out there. Like,
Yeah,
would you say you come across that?
a little bit, and I mean, I've got to say, like, I'm flattered in a way. It's nice to have people that think that highly of what I'm doing.
Yeah, of course.
I've found that to be incredibly challenging, though. You know,
Yeah.
I've come to, when somebody shows up and asks me to coach them, I've gotten used to the situation where they know a bit about what I do and what I think and how I do things.
Mm-hmm.
So, we can hit the ground running pretty much. Like, if I've got to, like, look, I want you to coach me, but I don't know anything about RPE. I don't know anything about, like, why is this week of training look the same as last week of training? Like, I will do my best for every athlete that signs up. So I'm trying to explain all that, but there's a lot to explain. And I've noticed that it makes it hard for that athlete because there's a lot of differences between how I might do it and what they might be used to.
Yeah.
And those differences, you start to go, wait a second, it starts to affect the trust, is what I'm saying. Does this guy know what he's doing, or is he even paying attention to what I'm doing? Yes, I am, but this is how my process works, and so there's kind of it's definitely a selection bias that kind of comes along with the territory, and
Of course,
the coach part of me that values my own coaching skill looks at that as a negative. It's like, well,
yeah.
you're only coaching people that already think and believe the things that you think and believe, so you're not developing the full suite of coaching skills, right?
Yeah.
But I've got to say, from like a systems ease of implementation standpoint, it probably makes things a lot smoother.
I know we've gone back to coaching. We were talking about Mike T as a powerlifter, not as a coach, right?
No, I was gonna get to that.
Because I know where Joey is. So I'm gonna revert you back to a powerlifter, right? So I think that's more interesting now, because especially you mentioned about USAPL and IPF. So my question to you, Mike, in terms of the competitions side of itself, what made you actually do powerlifting as an athlete? Because you could have just stopped, and because you created RTS, as Joey mentioned, is massive, right? You could have just said, you know what, like just what Joey Flex does with the Flex system, I'm just going to be a coach. So what made you like keep on being competitive as well?
A lot of where I'm at is driven by that. Like, I started out as an athlete, and it started out as me trying to build better systems, not only for my athletes, but for myself. I've always thought that if a system that I think there's some system that I want to use, a system of writing training or delivering training or anything like that, if it's good enough for my athletes, then it's good enough for me. I should use the same systems that I'm using for my athletes, with very rare exceptions. And usually the exceptions are like in the realm of experimentation. So there's that. And lots of times when I'm in the gym, I've trained by myself for years and years. So there's lots of times where I'm sitting there, in between sets, I'm just kind of thinking about things, and I get a lot of ideas from that as well. And some of them don't work out, some of them do. And I've come to appreciate that as part of my creative process, I think. I used to feel a little bit guilty, like, I'm taking time from my work day to go train, like, and maybe I ought to be doing more like RTS work, Well, it is an important part of my creative process. If I don't have that time where I'm going and training, then I don't have the same ideas that I would have otherwise.
I know that everyone's like saying I should stick to you as an athlete, so I'm gonna stick by that, or try anyway. But so the question I had in mind from what you just said was that on a scale of 1 to 10, not RP scale, it doesn't have to be, but how competitive would you say you are out of 10? 10 being like, man, ain't no one beating me, and 1 being like, I'm just here to participate,
Probably 6 or 7, I think.
Oh, so it's
These
just
days?
just above like average, I guess.
Yeah.
So in that instance, then would you say that, say for like, I know like you're coaching athletes and there's people in your weight class, and like this dude probably training's the same length of time you have, but because of your help, I don't know if you find this as a win-win situation, but because of your help, same weight class and everything, he's progressing immensely way more than you are.
Yeah.
Like maybe even things consider, like he has more like external factors that's pretty much
Yeah.
like increasing his stresses, Would you
So,
be a bit
Bryce
like,
Krawczyk is a good example of this,
yeah?
because he's a 120 as well.
Mhm.
And we talked about it after Worlds this year, because look, I was in South Africa and I'd done a competition and it went well, but also, let's be honest, a lot of 120s hadn't yet competed that year, so there's a little bit of that too. And a lot of people, say to me, "Hey, next year you're back here, yeah?" And I'm,
Yeah.
look, okay, I would like to be, but there's a long road. There's a lot of strong lifters. We'll see. But
I mean, that 895 looked very easy. Like an RP 7-8 day.
Sweet.
I'm hoping so. I hope so, but we'll see.
Okay.
But yeah, I was talking with Bryce about it. That hey, if I do this again and we're competing against each other, but neither of us feel like that's a problem.
Mhm.
When I'm writing the training, I'm doing my very best for Bryce. Like, I've known him for a long time and just really genuinely only want the best for him.
I mean, yeah, of course. I'm not saying you're gonna go out your way to sabotage him,
Right.
but
I know.
I'm just trying to figure out like how you're internalizing it. Like, are you sort of like, oh man, like he's
My own
going.
competitive attitude has changed a lot. Like, if we were having this conversation in 2014, it would have been like my competitive
Sabotage
is
him.
like 8 to 10. Yeah.
Kill him.
But I mean, in the time since then, and especially, it's easy to feel that competitive, I think, when you're one of the people who are contending for the top spot. You're gold medalist, silver medalist in that range, and you're like, man, if I can just push it another % or 2, then I'll be the man. It's easier to feel that level of competitiveness. You compete against Dennis Cornelius a few times, and you go, look, I see where I'm going to be, and I've got to find something else to focus on, and I think that's fine. I think for me, it's it's a, well, if I look at the mistakes that I've made as an athlete and kind of the mistake that I made in terms of pushing things too hard, not taking my own advice and listening to my body when it's time to back off, that's what caused my 6-year break to begin with, you know? So now as I kind of start coming back, I can't make the same mistake. I can't get so focused on everyone else that I start doing dumb stuff. I have to think, what can I do to make myself the best that I can be? What do I do to produce my best total? And it is what it is, you know? And there is some part though, like I know there's a balance to be struck, because we've all felt, you know, you sign up for the competition, you see somebody, you see the close rival and they do something that's, you know, you go, I can do that. And you feel the juices flowing. That's good. But when it starts to go a little bit too far and you start taking risks that you shouldn't take or making bad decisions, it's really hard to know where that line is. It's really hard.
Is it sort of like I would say the ego? You just sort of just like gotta let it go. And I'm happy you brought that on, because like, you know, as an athlete and being around athletes yourself, is there like the psychology that you psychological approach that you advocate to others that you have to just sort of like, yo, ignore that voice, because that voice is gonna mess you up. It's like, you know, it's gonna fuck you up basically. Are there like I guess strategies that you use to just be like, hey, listen, you got to do X, Y, Z? If so, what are they?
Well, there have been a number of athletes that I'll send messages to or emails to, particularly after important second place finishes. You know, because if you watch the medal ceremony at nationals or at worlds or something, the second place guy a lot of times is standing up there fairly grumpy. And I've been there. I know what that feels like, right? And I'll tell them, like, look, I've got a bunch of pictures of me standing.
Alex, why are you laughing? Are you laughing at me? Go on, Mike.
Yeah, sorry, Mike. Yeah, go on. But you said a bunch of pictures of you.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of pictures of me standing on the second place podium looking pissed off, you know, but then, you know, a year later, I'm not in that competition at all. You know? And you go, second place wasn't so bad. You know, the only person that thinks second place is bad is the guy who's in second place. You know, everyone else thinks that's pretty cool.
On the flip side, though, second place is first loser. You know what I mean? Like...
Yeah, I mean, this is my characteristic of my soft mentality, I guess.
I've got a very interesting
messages to guys who are in those situations, and they're like, "Look, man, I know it's fine to be disappointed. It's fine to feel those feelings and stuff, but also know in your thinking brain that this is still pretty good, and that, you know, try to take a step back and look at it and say, that's pretty neat, you know." So I'm trying to bring that with me as I come back to competing. If I go to a competition and put up a personal best total, but don't place, you know, how do you feel about that? Like, well, man, a few years ago, I didn't know if I'd ever compete again, you know? So I've got to, much less like set a personal best. So I've got to think that I'll focus on that and feel okay with it, you know? Especially a sport like powerlifting, where, you know, if you do the best you can do and other people are just stronger, there's not a lot you can do about that.
Yeah.
You know? So did you represent yourself well is kind of the thing to focus on, I think.
More go on, I think you can relate there.
So I just had, because like you said, you were South Africa, so I was also South Africa. I was in third place. I've had the chance to see, a bit personal, I've had the chance to see the Anatolis, the ML, the Mikey Davis, and also the Bob Matthews from afar. And like, obviously, as you climb that ladder and you start getting closer, like someone who looked like a freak is only about 10 to 15 kg away. After prep, it's very, like, even now, because I've got another competition coming up, it's a hard mental balance as to when you draw the line as to the risk versus reward ratio.
Yeah.
So how hard do I keep on pushing, because I'm so close, and like
Right.
if I can get an extra 5 kg on my bench, or an extra 10, or another 5 on my deadlift, or another 5 on my squat, and all that needs for me is ignore my knee pain from this session. Like, I know it'll be good. I just need to keep on pushing. This is the right path, but my knee hurts right now. But I keep on pushing. Like, it's a tricky place as an athlete myself to be in. But obviously, you're a lot more experienced. You've got time. You've been there multiple times. And what would you advise a lifter who's gaining strength, getting closer, but obviously you don't want to rush it and get to that level so quickly while hampering long-term success?
Yeah, I would say talk to your coach and talk to the old timers and stuff like that. I mean, for real, that's because you're right, man. It is so hard to know. Should I push it just a little bit more, or is this really the sign that I should back off and play the long game? And it's tough to know, and a lot of times it takes an outside perspective. I mean, powerlifting careers can be long, and if you're into that, I'm into that, then take your time. And you may surprise yourself too that I've definitely seen people get stronger by backing things off a bit. Not saying that that'll happen all the time for everybody, of course, but doing the right thing for your own lifting is the best choice, and kind of keeping that long-term goal in mind is the way to go. Because if you do push it too hard and you've got to take, like in my case, several years off, that's not how you want to go, and that's a much more difficult road than just backing things off for now
and chipping
so
away.
like, to tell you a story about kind of where I was at in 2014. I mean, if anybody should know better, it should be me, right? Like, I should know the listen to your body mantra, the RPE auto regulation thing. Like, I should get it, but I still have this little voice in the back of my head that goes, just do more, just work harder than them, you know? That's not always the answer, but I was listening to that little voice too much. And so I'm pushing the session. I'm doing more, doing more volume, doing more intensity and everything. And I'm getting fairly beat up. And I remember going over to a friend's house for a barbecue, and I go to sit down at the table next to him, and I sit down like an old man. And he's like, "What is the matter with you?" And I was like, explain to him my training block, and I'm really pushing things right now. And he goes, "Maybe you should back things off a little bit." And I go, "No, you don't understand. I've got to work harder than everybody else." I think, man, if I had just listened to him, like, how might things have been different? And I mean, I did go to that competition. That was one where I placed second. But I represented myself well. I lifted well and strong. But it was very downhill after that, for a couple years. And it was a process of try to come back. Oh, it still hurts, so you back off. You try to work around it. Well, the next competition's coming up, and then everything hurts. So, but eventually, kind of after a couple of years of that, figuring out, hey, I'm just not going to sign up for another one until I get this stuff sorted out. And
so just so the viewers know exactly. I was going to ask that. So what exactly happened, just for those listening that don't know the whole background of it?
For me, I had this pain in my hip when I would lock out a squat or a deadlift, or basically anything that had like a forward lean component to it. So squatting and deadlifting, locking out would hurt. Sometimes it hurt a little, sometimes it would hurt a lot. I searched for the root cause of this for years. Eventually, the most likely thing was some sort of back injury, some sort of disc injury, possibly. I mean, it ends up not mattering a great deal because the solution is, hey, don't do stuff that hurts and pay attention to what triggers your issues. So for me, it was that forward lean position. So I could do front squats, but I couldn't do back squats. So that explains my obsession with front squat for about 5 years there.
Fair enough.
I got a question for you that I just want your opinion or your take on it. It's just, I know you said like, you know, taking a few steps back would probably be more beneficial for you than always outworking God knows who, XYZ at the time. Just your opinion on, you know, the French right now. Like, just arguably they're pushing hard, right? Like,
Very.
yeah, just to say the least. And you know, I know you mentioned your viewpoint and everything, and we actually had Pana Tyranides, I'm pretty sure you're aware. You know, we spoke to him, you know, we had him on the podcast, we spoke to him and just went through like his, I guess, his mental approach to things. I know you said like with each competition, you know, as long as you know, did better than before, then you should take pride in that. But there was a point in the discussion with him where he said like he'd always want to push it because he just does, because he had to, I don't know, I found it kind of dark. I don't know how the other lads took it, but he mentioned how you just never know which competition is your last, right?
That's true. Yeah.
And I thought, whoa, that's like, it hit me pretty much. I took that in pretty hard, and it's
I
kind
might
of
start the next day.
yeah.
Nah, I'm joking. I really didn't know.
It's kind of like one of those YOLO pretty much approach to, and I just know what's your take on that is my question really.
Yeah, and sorry, just to also quickly add on before you answer this, also because in the sense of you never know when your last competitive meet will be, because there are always people coming from behind also. So yeah, like you never know when you'll no longer be number one or number two because some younger kid has caught up with you and surpassed you. So yeah.
That's right. Yeah. But it's important to realize that that is going to happen at some point, you know, and it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Someday we hit our last PR, and we are unlikely to know in advance that that's what's going on. So yeah, I mean, it's in a lot of ways I agree with taking what's there, but there does need to be a balance between take what's there and making long-term decisions too. You know, it's kind of like like in day-to-day life, the philosophy of seize the day. You know, you don't know if today might be, you don't know if today might be your last day, but also you should probably still save some money for the next day, because it might be your last day, but it also might not.
Fair point. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and like, how do you parse that? I don't know. So the last competition I did, I pulled my opening deadlift and it went as expected. Pulled my second attempt deadlift and it looked about how you'd expect. And my planned third attempt deadlift put me at an 895 total. And I said, okay, that's the plan. Can I reach another 5 kilos and go for that 900 total? Is it there? Maybe it's there, right? Maybe. And I asked a friend of mine, he looked at the film real quick, and he said, well, which negative outcome would you be happier with? You know, would you rather pull 365 and hit it and go, yeah, I could have done 5 more, I should have gone for it? Or would you rather go for 370, possibly miss, and then, you know, have that? And I said I would rather, you know, take 365 and get it and know that there's more there next time. You know, that's what I would rather have happen. That's how it went.
That and miss the kilos, right? Because it's the opportunity cost. It's literally, yeah.
I mean, and for me, this wasn't so much about competing against the other guys, but just what total was I going to come in with? You know, so that's what I chose to do. And I mean, is that the right choice? Well, I guess if I never compete again, if something happens, I never get to compete again, that'll be the wrong choice. But you also don't know that in advance. So.
Yeah. I mean, Mike, I think I'm going to bring you back to one thing Joey said there. I know you answered pretty much the question, but it's still the French.
Yeah.
What's your view on them?
I mean, I don't know. Like the devil's in the details, especially when it comes. I assume we're talking about like the training philosophy side of it.
Yes.
So devil's in the details, and I wish there was an easier way to like know those details, right? Because first of all, I'm a programming nerd, so I like that stuff to begin with. But if we could figure that out, like a lot of what we see are like 10 RPE, very heavy, very low rep sets. And that is kind of the defining characteristic of the training approach, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that's necessarily wrong. And I've done strategies like that for shorter periods of time than it appears that they're doing. But if that's only, you know, a handful of sets a week, and then there's other stuff going on as well, then maybe it balances out. I don't think having any sort of training that's too static, I don't think that's beneficial in the long term. So it doesn't matter if it's high intensity, if it's low intensity, high volume, like whatever philosophy we're talking about. If it's the same block after block after block after block, I don't think that's the way to go. Like from my own perspective, when I get in trouble as a coach is when training starts to get too static. We find the thing that works and we're just like, okay, let's just stick close to home base and just keep doing this thing that works. You can do that some, but you do have to do some other things as well, either to set you up for future progress or to just give those same adaptation channels a break so that they can resensitize a little bit.
I think that's a very delegative answer. I'm kind of happy you did, because when another thing that he did say when we had him on, and we mentioned that we were going to have you on at a later date, is that he wants to give you all the props and all the respect, because everything that he learned, all the books that he's read, the emerging strategies, he's a big like fan of, and he just loves you for that.
Yeah.
So
I got to chat with Pan a little bit in South Africa, and I think really highly of him as a coach as well. And obviously what they're doing with the French team is very, very impressive. I would love to dig into the nuts and bolts of things a bit more and really try to, like, my perspective on these things a lot of times too is that you see whether it works or it doesn't. And in this case, you've got the French team that's kind of
doing well,
exploding, right? So there's something there. There's something to be learned from it, you know, and I want to find out what it is.
Yeah, I do too. So I'm going to see him in a few days, literally in a few days, and I'm going to try and dissect as much as I can from him. And then if there's anything to divulge, I'll probably hit you up too and be like, yo, Mike, so this is what he's kind of getting at in terms of like the nuts and bolts that you were talking about. If I get nothing, then I failed. I failed the mission.
But please don't go there and do the RPs that he does. Remember, he's getting gray hair now because of
and I'm getting no hair now.
Well, very interesting. I think Jerens, you're like a very so Mike, I've been following you for a while on social media for ages right now, and I think you're very high. You recommend a lot of volume or high rep work a lot for your training. Yes or no? Or you're a big fan of high rep work, like 12 reps, 10 reps, give or take.
It's interesting that like how I get characterized changes over time. So
Fair enough.
The perception around that, but I've also had the other perception that like I'm really into high RPE, high intensity stuff. But the one thing that has been constant is like doing lots of things that's not the competition lift. We do train the competition lift, like that perception can definitely go too far. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no, that's fine. Because I was just going to try and link it to what I see from Jerens training. Jerens is a person, Joey writes his program, who does heavy weights for an 83 for high reps. So 250 for 10 reps, for example, something ridiculous like that. I just wanted to get your thoughts, because obviously you and Joey seems to have taken your side of programming from that angle. I, on the other spectrum, am a very low volume lifter. So I don't think I've ever done 240 for 8 reps in my powerlifting career.
Mike, just before you answer, full disclosure, that rep work of 250 for 10, that was just on a whim. It wasn't actually written down. Just full disclosure.
Okay. It was 8. It's meant to be 8 reps, but I miscounted it. I hit 10.
Yeah.
So
Well, hey,
And it still moved quick as well.
Still moved.
Very good.
At least you went on
easy.
that side of it, right? Like at least
Yeah.
you get 10 instead of 6.
Yeah. I mean, that's the positive way of looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah, I do 3 and I'm out. That's it. So I just wanted to tie this into a post you did on your social media saying about your thoughts on work capacity, the importance of it. Powerlifters need to work hard on high reps. In terms of for example, I respond very well to low volume training. And I don't know if that's a thing where I'm not necessarily pushing, because doing 250 for sets of 10, that's very impressive. But as a lifter, I've never felt the need to have to push my volume or my rep work that much. But also I don't think I respond well to it. I respond better to like reps of 3s and 5s and push the weight over time. So I think where I wanted to tie this question was, what's your view on it? Do you think everyone should at some point in the training try and push that higher rep work? It facilitates for better training down the line? Or is every lifter kind of unique and each one's different, where some people just respond to lower volume and there's no need to ever develop that work capacity as much?
I think it would probably be worthwhile to explore some higher rep stuff, but that may not be anytime soon. You know, like if you find something that's working for you and you're progressing, then come back to it. There's a fine line there. I said a few minutes ago, you don't want the training to be too homogenous. So you do need to come back to it, but there needs to be some variety. But you'll find that people lots of times will have this set of things that they respond well to. And if like all the possibilities of training are really broad, maybe they respond to this set of things that's, you know, somewhat narrow. So stay there.
Yeah.
But
So
just
stay in the pocket, basically.
Yeah. Well, just know that that's going to change over time too.
Yeah.
When that stops working so well, what I've noticed is that I've noticed this more lately too, as I've kind of gotten to the further and further into my own lifting career and worked with more other powerlifters who are like 15, 20 plus years training age. Things change again. You know, in the beginning, you get stronger doing a lot of different things, and lots of people enjoy a big variety of training. Then you get into this intermediate stage, and sooner or later, people start doing, just speaking broad strokes generally, you see people that will get into high frequency of training. Sometimes that's with a high volume as well, but it's pretty consistently high frequency of practice with the competition movements. And they get a lot out of it in that intermediate stage, and it really pushes them to high competitive levels. I think sometimes people get married to that approach. And that might be an approach that works great for even years, but eventually it slows down and stops. And, you know, you've been grinding away for a few years and don't have much to show for it. Maybe it's time to shift things up again and do something a bit different. And you're really in fairly unexplored territory by the time your training age is over 10. There's just not a whole lot. Like, we're definitely in the realm of anecdotes from other powerlifters at that point, I think.
Would you say then from that is that through the training age of a lifter, they go through different epochs, as you know, to say it like
that's the good word for it.
Like I've because I've always, you know, flirted with the idea that I've been with Durance for what, 5-6 years now. I think there's only been one change, and that was after 4 years, if I'm correct, Durance, right? Like in terms of the training approach. I mean, a good portion of it was because of the pandemic and the lack of accessibility to, you know, accessories. Sorry, I forgot the word there. Yeah, the accessory work, and just had to sort of work around it, and it still worked. And again, like just the difference in that, and then the just to coin your word, but the strategy that I used definitely was immensely different to before. So I guess, yeah, like you said, you can only go from whatever other coaches, other lifters from X amount of training age has experienced. And I know hearing it from yourself, it just feels like there's so much to like learn, and give me all of it. I want all the knowledge.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh, me too. But I had a lot of the stuff that I learned that informed the emerging strategies approach comes from Derek Evely and his work with Dr. Bondarchuk. And something that he mentioned was that Bondarchuk encourages people to change their whole system, like their system of planning training, their system of organizing training, change the whole system every 5 years.
5 years?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's interesting, right? Like, because again, if you think like, what are you adapting to? We tend to think, you know, the sets, the reps, the load, things like that. And does it matter if, you know, it's an RPE that gets you there? Does it matter if it's, you know, development blocks and emerging strategies, or block periodization, or daily undulating periodization? Like, does it really matter if it's the same weight, same reps, same sets? You know, on one level, no, but maybe it does. If you think about a lifter's attention being important, and you know, you can get stale with anything, and if you can change up, you know, hey, we usually do, you know, hypertrophy blocks and strength blocks and things like that, but now we're going to do accumulation blocks and transformation blocks, and I mean, it may still be very similar, like some of the details end up changing, but just the novelty and organization maybe is enough to be engaging and exciting.
Yeah,
you know?
that sort of gives me the vibes that I saw from what Lane Norton designed for powerlifting programs. That there is the accumulation and like intensity and peaking blocks, and they all look very much similar. It's just I guess the intensity and the volume just changed only slightly. I guess where I understand what you mean by it can get stale in X period of time.
Yeah. I think, like, to tie it back to an emerging strategies concept of like time to peak, I think that's what's going on with time to peak. Like, why is it different from lifter to lifter? Why is it so consistent? You know, and I think a lot of it is mediated psychologically. You know, if like, how long does it take you to stop being so enthusiastic about a certain approach to training? You know, if you're repeating more or less the same training week each week, you know, in the beginning, it's a new block. Okay. So the second week, we're going to try to improve on what we did last week. And maybe that's successful, maybe not. If not, if it's still relatively new, it's only the second time you've gone through this sequence, right?
Yeah.
By the third week, you know, most people have a good bit of momentum. We're adding more weight. This is fun. By week 4, you know, where do you end up? Do you peak in 4, 5, 6, 7? Some people peak in like 8 weeks. Well, how long does it take you to not be quite as sharp? You know, because especially if the weights are going up each week, you have to continue to really bring it every week. You know, how long does it take before you just don't quite have that mental edge? You know, and in that way, you know, Bondarchuk emphasized a lot of how many peaks per year can you get. You know, that he would say that an athlete really develops when they get into this peak condition. So he would really try to push for the maximum number of peaks per year. And I can kind of see that too. Like, if you think that there's value in really making you bring that sharpness to training, really bring the effort, the focus, attention to detail, getting all your variables right. If that stuff is important, you have to do that to get to those peak conditions. So maybe there is, maybe it's more than just like mystical woo-woo stuff. You know? There's some physiology behind it.
Yeah. So I'm actually happy you mentioned the peaking sort of things. You know, there are other philosophies out there, strategies out there, and I just need to sort of hear from you what you think, where there are coaches who advocate where a lifter's peak for individual lifts won't necessarily time the same. Like, for example, a lifter's bench might not peak the same time as their squat and deadlift. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what your emerging strategies would say about that.
By the way, Durance, your training block next training block is going to be so different. Good luck. All the best, Durance.
Don't worry, man. Look, I got my phone. I'm searching for a new coach already. Don't worry.
Mike, if you take Durance from me, I'll understand in it.
That's who Durance probably just DM'd right now.
They probably keep me away from like the RPE guy. Yeah, I haven't really had the issue of like different times to peak too much. Usually when it's been off by more than a week or so, it's been because I've messed up some variable in the training. And if I can just tweak it a little bit, then we can pretty much peak together. Sometimes they're just a week apart, and that's manageable. But if they're like wildly different, then that usually indicates an issue.
As an athlete, that's applied to you also then? The whole, you may have tweaked something a little bit differently and that's how the outcome was.
Yeah. So like if your bench peaked in week, I would want to know like what happened. Was the bench training just not effective? Was the volume too high and we got overtrained? It seems like something went wrong there to me.
Mike, I had a question. This is a little bit different from the coaching aspect. Do you have a coach yourself, or do you have someone that, because there's one thing I know is, I mean, even Joey has done this himself now. He used to coach himself, but to the point where it came to the time where, hang on, I think I need someone else from outside me to look at what I'm doing for myself. He's so good at looking at doing, helping me and helping the other athletes that he has. But himself, he came to the time where he kind of like hit a block. There's a brick wall, thinking, hang on, I need someone else to actually get me through this window. So what about yourself? Is it the same thing, or you've conquered that? You're thinking, I know my body and I know what I need?
I don't know if I'd say I conquered it, but probably too much of a control freak to let it go completely. But I definitely have, really in the last year or couple years, I've been collaborating with one of our other coaches, John Garfano, who's just a really brilliant coach. We'll kind of toss ideas back and forth. And a lot of times I like to write it. I like to, I'm thinking about it all the time anyway, so I may as well kind of get my hands dirty and write something up, but we'll go over it together. And if I have any questions, or especially something goes off plan, like in the last competition prep, I tweaked my back. It was something fairly minor, but we were going back and forth very regularly, just thinking it through. And it wasn't anything necessarily groundbreaking, but it's really helpful to have the outside perspective and somebody else who's got their own ideas, their own experiences, and can kind of focus your attention on different things. And so,
as an athlete yourself, looking into your own coaching, and I know you said you got John looking and helping you write up. Is there ever a point, say like your third week into a block, right, and you're like, yo, this doesn't look right, and it's not feeling how it should feel? Do you ever go pretty much like off program and be like, nah, I'm gonna rub this out real quick and just do something else? How often would you say that occurs?
It's not rare. I would say it's
quite common.
Yeah.
So you are your own bad athlete then, would you say?
Yeah.
So that means it's okay for me to start rubbing some of my stuff.
I was gonna say,
Oh no! What did I do?
Nah.
I'm thinking about tomorrow already. Tomorrow is death. It's a death row tomorrow. You know what I mean? I'm thinking like, instead of doing 3 of 280 or something, I'm just gonna do 1.
Shot myself in the foot with that one. I'm so sorry.
Interesting. Mike,
I've got a question quickly. Sorry to cut you off. because I remember, Mike, you were talking about front squats, right? And I have seen on your Instagram that you do a lot of front squats. My question here is, I don't know if you've heard, I don't know if you've spoken to him as well about this, but Chance Mitchell,
Oh, it doesn't rate them.
you know where I'm going with this one, right?
Yeah.
So I think Chance Mitchell, he made a post a long time ago where he had like different tiers and stuff. He pretty much posted front squats as like the worst for any carryovers. What's your view on that? And also, do you do you prescribe front squats to your athletes as well?
I do. I think front squats are misunderstood when it comes to powerlifting. And I also think they're not easy to apply, and they're often maybe better choices, but not always. I wouldn't say I prescribe them a ton. I don't think they tend to carry over that well to squatting. More often they carry over well to deadlifting. The limiting factor oftentimes is back strength. And especially if you've got an athlete whose back is dinged up, maybe they can't deadlift twice a week, but you want to train those muscles twice a week. You could deadlift once, you could front squat once, and get a similar kind of effect. You know, there's a big learning curve to front squatting, though. It's not the same as back squatting. So, hold on one second.
Yeah, no worries.
God.
I think we're getting close to that 90-minute mark, so we're gonna try grab some last few questions, and mine ones are gonna come in hot, boys. So I hope you're ready.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, sorry about that. But,
No worries, Mike. Yeah, you were saying.
I was just gonna say that there's a big learning curve to it. I find like a lot of powerlifters will come in and try to do a front squat as if the bar is on their back and really have a bad time. The mechanic is different. So like when I first started doing it, I was doing it because that was basically what I could do and it didn't cause pain. But like for the first month, it was just me getting proficient with front squatting. I added something like, 40 or 50 kilos to my front squat in just that first month. It's just proficiency.
Yeah.
So I do think that you've got to cross that bridge and get proficient with the movement before it's going to be valuable to you. But if you can get proficient with it, then there might be some cases where it's useful. So I'm really reluctant to like really throw out any movements. I don't think it's like a make or break thing, but like I've got it back in my program this block because I feel like since I've stopped, my goal was a 600-pound front squat. When I finally got that, I didn't front squat again for like 2 months. And I could notice in my back squat, my brace wasn't quite the same. My confidence in like pushing forward into my knees, I don't know if that makes sense, but it wasn't quite the same, right? So I thought, well, I need to bring back
the anterior adaptation.
So hold on. Did you just say you front squatted 600 pounds?
Yeah, that was a big goal of mine. So here's the thing. Like this is.
I can't even do 70.
This is my.
Oh, come on, Durance.
So I stopped competing in powerlifting. I said, okay, what can I do? I can do front squats. So I started doing front squats, and then I treated it as if it was a competition movement, and really got to where I cared about it, and I developed front squat goals, and I got this goal of front squatting 600 pounds, and I thought, like, man, no one else cares about this but me, but I can't just like let it go.
Well, we know Chance definitely doesn't.
Come back to powerlifting a lot sooner had I not like I'm obsessed with like I've got to do this 600-pound front squat, and then I can turn my attention back to competing in powerlifting. But it didn't actually work out that way. I did my powerlifting competition before the
600 pounds. Yeah. I mean, I guess that all ties in with the whole, you still have goals in mind that you can say that you enjoy getting, not just in powerlifting alone, but just in the whole area of lifting heavy weights, because 600 pounds is a lot. Mike, we're actually getting to the 90-minute mark, and we're gonna throw in the last few questions, and I wanna go first, and this is
obviously.
Okay, I'll try. Okay, so my question is, like, there's a lot of coaching teams out there. You've met and come across many. If you had to rank your top 3,
Oh man, you're gonna do that?
Oh, that's good.
your top. I told you, look, I told you, boys, I'm gonna come in hot. So yeah, your top 3 out there. Which coaching, which coaching group would you rank first, second? I need to know first, second, and third in.
Okay, all right. First,
And
second, third. Does
yeah.
that have to be in that order, or just like top 3, any order?
No. Can it be in ascending order? So third, second, and first, please.
Okay. Third. I guess I would have to put TSG in third, because I mean, like, how can you, like, they coach some really strong people, and I know Jason well. I think really highly of his approach, like the way that he thinks through the problems. His, like, I don't know if you've ever met Jason Tremblay, but he's a very soft-spoken guy. He's got a very aggressive programming style, which I kind of like. But
I'm trying to get him here next.
Man, if you talk to him and just remember to yourself, Mike thinks this guy has an aggressive programming style. Like, there's definitely a mismatch between, like, the personality that he presents. And
I'm definitely gonna bring that up. I'll be like, yo, Mike said this.
No, I like Jason a lot. He's good people. But so I put them there.
I'm also gonna tell him that you put him in third out of your top 3. But yeah, go on. Second place, please.
I guess I would. I don't know if it's technically correct to do this, but I'm gonna lump together the French team, because I think Penna has a pretty outsized influence on what's going on there.
Oh yeah.
Maybe I'm. If I thought about it more, I might switch the order of my second and first, but this is what I'm going with.
Let's stick with this, please.
Yeah. And then in first place, I mean, how could you not put Joey on there?
Whoa, you didn't even choose.
Oh, you didn't include yourself on the list.
Well, yeah, man. I thought that's how are you gonna?
No. Let's
I'll choose myself first. And
okay, so then RTS first, Joey Flex second, and then French team. So technically TSG comes fourth.
Yeah. Well, if you put it that way, if you want to put it like in the way so that I'm throwing like maximum shade at people, then yeah, definitely.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That's what I wanted.
Got it. Alex, you're next.
For me, it's just more about where you are at the moment, man. So obviously we know, you took some time of powerlifting. I think we can all agree and say that if anything, that probably made you more on it, like as of right now. That probably made you more like fall in love with the sport even more, I guess. Is that right? Because obviously it's been a long time since you've been competing, and now that you are competing, you're more competitive, you're enjoying the sport more now that you can do it a bit more. So what I'm trying to get at here is pretty much like what keeps you motivated, what keeps you loving the sport. And obviously with kids, you're a family man, you've got a lot going on for yourself. How do you fit life in powerlifting? Because obviously it's not an easy sport, like we're, and the majority of us here are 30 years old, 30 plus, with the exception of Mo. I hate you, but yeah. We've all got a lot going on. So like, how do you fit everything with powerlifting, with training and stuff like that? Because especially you, with competing, and you're an elite lifter, so it's like your training sessions aren't 15-20 minutes. They used to be, but now your training sessions are a lot harder. So how do you fit all of that within your life in itself?
I'm really fortunate that I can make it part of my workday. I mean, I'm fortunate, but I'm also I also kind of crafted this stuff intentionally so that it could be this way. But yeah, that I really feel for people that I think it takes a lot more dedication, really, for people that are working. Like one of my clients is an ER doctor and also a family man, and he finds time for training and competing at a national level. And I think that's really amazing, And we've got to be flexible, and we adapt things a lot. but that's just part of it. And he's gonna find a way to get the work in. And it's not always perfect, but he finds a way to make it happen. I'd say that's really more dedicated than what I'm doing. I get to make it part of my normal
Day
time.
to day, yeah.
On a follow up to that, though, I'm sorry,
Who
boys.
said
I'm sorry. I know. Just a little
Okay.
follow up to that. Would you say that people that also say things like, "Oh, I haven't got time," when you hear those words, do you think bullshit? Sorry if I'm swearing and your kid can hear.
No.
Hopefully he can't. But
No, he can't. But,
good.
no, I don't think that, because I've been on that end of it. So when I first decided I'm going to step back from competing, I thought, this is a chance for me to do other physical things that I've always put on the back burner, but I've been interested in, right? I'm not going to twist my ankle and miss worlds or something like that. So I signed up for a boxing class and a kickboxing class. And man, it was so fun. I really legitimately had a good time doing it. It was a totally different challenge. And I did it for a couple months. And then I had this period of time where I traveled a lot for like a month. I was out of town like almost every week for a month. And I really got out of the habit. When I came back from that travel, I just never went back. It wasn't that I meant to quit. It just, life got in the way.
Yeah.
And I think, like, man, I can relate to how that happens to people. If it's not like built in and really part of how you do things, then I can see how it falls away.
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
I'm a bit split because I've got two questions. I'm trying to decide on which one to ask. So if you guys don't mind, I'm just gonna ask two. The first one
Go.
should be okay. So you obviously are IPF Worlds, South Africa. Obviously, I think you've had a lot of experience in the sport. You've been here since 2003. You've coached so many junior athletes, so many open level athletes, so many world level athletes. Were you impressed with, or was there anyone in South Africa that piqued your interest and like you were very impressed to the level of execution or performance or level of potential you saw in that lifter that could go in the future? Was there anyone that like just piqued your interest while you were there?
Gosh, yeah. I mean, I assume we want to get specific here.
Yeah.
It
doesn't.
It's just anyone that comes to mind.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be Durance just because he's on the podcast right now.
more is there, one there.
Yeah, I'm a low level man.
Anyway,
he'd
go
probably
on,
even miss
Mike.
my comp.
And gosh, there's a lot of people, and this is particularly tough for me because I'm terrible with names in general.
Fair enough.
Talk about weight class, it's fine. We'll know.
Yeah, we'll deduce it to some degree.
Look, as a 120 lifter, I mean, I've got to mention Lugo. I mean, dude is strong and he's experienced too. Like he gets maybe typecast a little bit as being like, I mean, he's a younger guy. Like he's not a junior or anything young, but he's a younger guy, and he's got a really young face too, so that helps him a lot. And for whatever reason, I think when people talk to him, they see him as like a new guy in the sport, but he's been around for a while. He's got a lot of experience, and he's really strong and getting stronger. So love to see it, in my own weight class and whatnot. So like he's one guy that I can't not pay attention to,
Okay.
I mean, that's on the athlete level as well. So I guess if I'm going to mention one person, I'll mention him. But
there you go. Yeah,
Lugo's
so amazing to meet person.
Though it's hard to. It would be hard to like come up with a list of that's not like absurdly long of talented people. You're leaving somebody out.
But the mask of Lugo in his first squad did not do him justice. Because I saw Gaston coming, was like, "What are you wearing?" He was like, "It's a mask." Go on,
I didn't really get a chance to ask him about all that.
Why he chose the mask? Yeah, because he wasn't wearing one throughout the whole comp, like while we're in South Africa until comp day.
Right. So I don't have any idea if this is true, but since it's live streamed, kind of got to wonder, like maybe people at home, like you're navigating relationships with other people and things like that too.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Or maybe he was worried he was going to throw up and didn't want to throw up.
Well, we know a 74 from Britain did, so.
Jesus Christ. Anyway,
rough.
go on, Mark.
So my second question was, again, you've been in powerlifting since 2003. You've competed as a equipped lifter, single ply, raw, hopped back and forth, up to 2022. So I wanted to know, I think one thing I discussed with Joey on the podcast previously was we've heard on the American side, some people say powerlifting is dying out or has stalled in its growth, so that it can't increase anymore, or this is how popular it's going to get. You've been here for a long time with things like Sheffield coming up, Arnold Sports Festival in UK, World Games, and like little big events coming up on the tested side where athletes have the potential to make money now in competing. What do you think of the powerlifting scene comparing it to back then? Do you think it's peaking now, or you've seen a peak and it's just, what do you think of the powerlifting scene? Do you think it's growing, or do you think it's kind of just in an interesting phase?
You know, the feeling to me is that it is kind of like slowing, like the growth is slowing, maybe stopping. I don't know, but I don't know if that's accurate. You know, like who knows how some of this stuff comes to be, but I think USA Powerlifting reported like record membership numbers for this year or something. So, I mean, maybe my perception is wrong. You know, that's always something to ask yourself.
I think it's the same in GB. They're on record to surpass even pre-COVID numbers in membership. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's awesome. I'm all in for the continued growth of the sport. I mean, it's good in so many ways, right? Like, it's good if you're a fan of the sport. It's good if you are, making your money from, being involved in the sport and really anyway. About the only people that it's bad for is if you're a competitor. Now you got a deeper talent pool to but I'll take it.
For my last one, Mike, I think this is what I would just bring you back to when you mentioned about how happy you are with working with Bryce and how much you actually love writing programming for him, and potentially next year you will go head to head with him. I think this is the question we've been asking most of our guests. So, I mean, probably the guys in the panel, they know what's coming. We saw a world, you was there. You saw the battle of the 76. You saw some amazing battles there. The 73 was there, although Chance was not rooting for Kaiko to get a last deadlift. But Agatha, on the other hand, Agatha Kema was all for Jess to get a deadlift. And we had Agatha here. We asked the same question, why. Her answer was, because I knew she's winning now, but next year is mine, the year after it's mine, the year after next year is mine, because she's younger. So, which makes sense. So if we put you in Agatha's place, would you do the same? To Bryce, by the way, I'm talking about here. Bryce is going there to put that 400.
But that's his athlete. Yeah, so he has to.
Absolutely. But like having
he's just about to beat you. He's just about to beat you for a world title.
Yeah. I would root for Bryce, but like having been on the other side of it with somebody that I didn't know. I mean, I would say I was more neutral during the lift, but then definitely happy when they missed it. Like, definitely celebrating when they missed it, right? So, like, I went back and forth. We had a couple competitions between me and a Ukrainian lifter, Alexander Shepel. In 2008, I dropped my last deadlift, and he won, and I took silver at the Equipped World. Then in 2009, we met at the World Games, and he dropped his last deadlift, and I won at the World Games. And so we were standing on the podium, and standing there, we get our medals, and you shake hands, and he leans over to me and he goes, 1 and 1.
I was just about to say, yo, it's 1-1.
And I mean, I thought, Yeah, but mine's the World Games, so I'm okay.
Fair enough.
Oh, that's
that's
amazing.
amazing.
I mean, it's great. I mean, because you have different views from different people, isn't it? How they
Right.
perceive that competitiveness as well. Especially
Yeah.
as you said, like with Bryce, because he's your athlete, and it's kind of like the win for Bryce is kind of your win at the same
Yeah,
time.
it's a win-win
But
situation.
yeah, but if it was Tony Cliff, you'll probably be at the back praying to Jesus Christ for him to rip his hand. Probably.
Yeah. Oh man, you see, it's so individual, right? Because like Tony Cliff, I mean, I've known Tony a long time. I wouldn't like wish bad things for Tony necessarily, but I don't have a whole lot of love lost for Mohamed Bouafia, for example. I feel like I maybe am owed some medals from that, if I'm not to put too fine a point on it. But if he somehow came back to competition, I would not be like cheering him on necessarily. You know, I don't. You know, I wouldn't make a scene over it. I don't think it would be a professional. I hope.
Of course,
but
yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily be encouraging. You know.
Would you like say like if they like flop really hard? Would you have like a little fist pump like going, yeah, come on, yeah, that's what you get. Like.
I mean, when Sheppel dropped his deadlift,
Yeah.
and I realized I had won the World Games.
Yeah, yeah.
There's definitely celebrating that happens.
Yeah.
You know,
Did you fist bump in the back or right in front of him?
Yeah. Well, I was standing right there watching from the side. So I mean, less directed like at his misfortune and more about my
your win
fortune. So.
Yeah. I hope he didn't see you though. Did he see you? He must have seen you.
Might be hard to miss.
That's why he went 1-1, bro.
That's understandable. I think I'm out of questions, Joey. So I'll give it to you.
Yeah. Oh, Mike. Honestly, so like happy to have you on. I hope you enjoyed it. I know we threw some questions there that were a bit more hot.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you guys. I think you guys are staying up really late to accommodate my schedule here, and I appreciate that.
Oh, bro, more than happy to. I mean, I have to be up at 4 a.m. tomorrow, but yeah, I'm happy to be on this. Get so much out of you, I hope, anyway. But yeah, thank you, and yeah.
Good to
hopefully, hopefully we do this again.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah. See you in Malta or something. That'll be so good.
In Malta, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Malta, that'll be sick.
Why, Joey? Are you gonna coach?
By the way, Mike, these two are 66 though. They will be going again to Chava the national next year. So that's what he's asking, are you gonna coach? Because
I'm gonna spelling
that up.
But yeah, Mike, again,
there,
like honestly, I'll see you there in the stands, innit? Mike, again, cannot thank you enough. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope your son understands where we took you away from him and everything.
I'm sure,
yeah. But yeah, thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day, bro.
Thanks, Mike.
Have a good night, guys.
Thank you, Mike. Bye. Appreciate that, man.
Bye.
Bye.